Hello everyone. In this video I'll be showing you my recommended settings for emulating the Ace Combat PS2 Trilogy. Note that this is not intended to be a full setup for the PCSX2 emulator. For that, I recommend watching this video by Igor L, where he details everything you need to know about setting up the PCSX2 if you haven't already. This is simply meant to be a quick and easy to follow instruction guide on how to get these three games set up and ready to play on the latest stable version of the emulator. Let's hop in the cockpit and get right to it. Let's begin by opening up the emulator. Here we have all three games. Before we do anything else, let's go to Tools and make sure that Show Advanced Settings is enabled. This will come in handy for later, not necessarily for Ace Combat 4, but for 5 and 0. Anyway, you can pretty much go ahead and copy all the settings that I'll be showing you for all three games. Let's start first with Ace Combat 4. Let's right-click, go to Properties, and let's go right to the settings that I recommend for the best gaming experience for these games. Let's start first with AC4, Vertical Sync on, Widescreen and no interlacing patches enabled. And as for the graphics, make sure that you set the renderer to Vulkan. It's the best looking and best performing renderer for all three games, so don't just set this for AC4, set it for 5 and 0 as well. Now, make sure these are the only settings in this display tab that I recommend you change. Widescreen to 16:9 on the aspect ratio. The FMV aspect ratio stays off by default. No need to override. And anti-blur stays on. Now let's go to rendering. For internal resolution, I recommend 1080p Full HD, no higher than that. However, it all depends. If you have a stronger system that can handle higher resolutions, then you can increase it to like 4 times or 6 times. But again, it all depends on if you have a stronger system for that visual payload. But other than that, let's just keep it at 1080p for now. Let's keep these settings as they are, and isotropic filtering to 16 times. MIP mapping has to stay on. This one is extremely important because if you don't turn it on, you're going to have nasty visual artifacts on the game's maps and ground textures, and you do not want that. Then we go to post-processing. Sharpening and anti-aliasing, keep FXAA on. This makes the edges at whatever objects look smoother. And as for contrast adaptive sharpening, this one isn't necessary. You don't have to turn it on, but I personally think it makes the game look nicer, so just enable sharpen and resize display resolution, increase the sharpness to 100%, and that's it. That's all you have to do for the graphics settings for AC4. And then we go to advanced, go down here, and enable game fixes and compatibility patches. This is going to fix a lot of the usual emulation bugs that come with these three games. AC4 tends to have more bugs, more visual bugs than 5 and 0, but it's developed a lot nicer with emulation development in recent years, so I guarantee you that just by turning these on will have the game perform, look, and play a lot nicer. So make sure to enable these. Alright, that's it for AC4. Now let's jump on to 5 and 0. I say both games because they both practically were made with the same engine. So whatever settings you apply for 5, you can go ahead and apply for 0 as well. They'll both work fine. Anyway, let's go with 5 settings. Go to Properties. Emulation, once again, Vertical Sync on. Patches, 16:9 enabled, no interlacing, enabled. Now for graphics, widescreen 16:9, FMV aspect ratio override off by default, anti-blur on, rendering, 3 times native. Again, stronger system, you can increase, but let's leave it here. Texture filtering, this one is important. Make sure that you leave it at forced excluding sprite. This is so that the FMV cutscenes do not have these nasty looking vertical lines obstructing the image. This will, by putting it to this setting, it gets rid of those visual glitches. anisotropic filtering 16%, mip mapping turned on to get rid of those nasty ground texture artifacts. Then we go to post-processing, same as before. This isn't necessary, but it helps the game look nicer in my opinion. And of course, FXAA on if you want it. And last but not least, this one's important, very important, especially for 5 and 0. Make sure that the game fixes and compatibility patches are enabled. Because if you don't, when you fire a missile at a ground or an aircraft or a ground target, the missile will not explode. Your bullets will not register any damage at all. It basically is a game-breaking bug that you can fix by enabling game fixes and enabling compatibility patches. That's why it's extremely important that you apply these for 5 and 0, and it's the reason why I brought up the show advanced settings in the first place. And that's about it. You've pretty much configured all 3 games. But last thing, and this one is extremely important, when creating a save file for the first time for all 3 games, go to their options, to the screen or display settings, and make sure that the aspect ratio for all 3 games is set to 16:9. Because if you don't do this, the effects of the widescreen patches will not fully take effect. And that's pretty much it. You are good to go. As one final summary, here are all the settings for the 3 games in written form. I hope this guide has helped you in getting to replay these classic games once again, and if not, to experience them for the first time. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun!